Broken heart, the greatest gift would be if you just leave this house. My son said to me a week before his birthday. His words cut into my heart like a sharp knife. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding the sweater I had just finished knitting for him. For a moment, I thought he was joking, but when I looked into his eyes, there was no smile, no playfulness, only coldness. So I did exactly that. I left. Not only the house, but everything that made that house stand. I emptied the accounts I had been secretly funding for years, withdrew the savings my late husband and I built, and quietly walked away. I didn't leave him a note, not even a whisper of where I was going. But what I left behind on him, what I made sure he would face when he woke up the next morning, completely destroyed him. And that was just the beginning. Broken heart. Hello everyone, my name is Margaret, but you can call me Grandma Maggie. I'm 72 years old, speaking to you from the quiet town of Springfield, Illinois here in the United States. Before I continue, please do me a little favor. Subscribe, like, and hit the notification button so you don't miss more of these true and emotional stories. And let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I always love to see people from all over the world. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I was born in a small farmhouse in Kentucky, but most of my life I raised my family here in Illinois. My late husband, Richard, worked as a carpenter, and I was a schoolteacher for nearly 40 years. Life wasn't easy, but it was beautiful. We saved every penny, built our home with sweat and sacrifice, and raised 2 children. David, my son, and Mary, my daughter. Richard passed away 10 years ago, and since then I poured all my energy into making sure my children never lacked anything. I gave and gave even when no one gave back to me. But as time went on, my children changed. Mary married and moved to California. She visits once in a while, but David, my son, stayed closer. Or at least his body stayed close. His heart seemed to drift farther and farther away. At first, I thought it was stress. He had a wife, kids, and bills. I told myself, he doesn't mean it when he shouts, when he ignores me, when he forgets to say thank you. But words cut deeper than a knife. And on that night, a week before his birthday, his words didn't just cut. They killed something inside me. I remember sitting alone in my bedroom after he said it. The greatest gift would be if you just leave this house. His voice echoed in my ears again and again. I tried to sleep, but the pillow was wet from my tears. The sweater I had made for him sat folded at the foot of my bed, like a silent witness to my heartbreak. I kept asking myself, how could my own son, the boy I carried in my womb, the one I nursed, the one I defended against bullies, the one I prayed over, say something like that to me? But the more I thought, the clearer it became. Maybe he truly wanted me gone. Maybe my staying there was not love, it was a burden. And so I began to plan. The next morning, I opened the drawer where I kept the bank papers. For years, I had been putting little amounts away. Money from my teaching pension, money Richard had left me, even some small investments. David never knew about them because he never cared to ask. He always assumed I lived off his kindness in letting me stay in the house. But the truth? I was the one paying most of the bills quietly. Electricity, water, groceries, every month I slipped money into the account so no one would know how much I was helping. That morning, though, I looked at those papers differently. Maybe it was time to stop giving. Maybe it was time to show him what life without me really looked like. For the next few days I moved carefully. While David was at work and his wife busy with the children, I started packing small things into an old suitcase. Family photos, a few dresses, the Bible Richard had given me on our 30th wedding anniversary. I even tucked the half-knitted sweaters I was working on into the bag. At the same time I visited the bank. Slowly I withdrew the funds. Not all at once, but enough that by the end of the week the accounts were empty. No one suspected anything. I was the quiet grandmother, always in the background, always smiling, always harmless. But in my heart, I was planning my departure. The night before his birthday came, David was in high spirits talking about how his friends were coming over. I sat quietly at the dinner table, eating the chicken stew his wife made. Not once did he ask me how I was. Not once did he notice the sadness in my eyes. After everyone went to bed, I went into the living room one last time. I touched the photo of Richard on the shelf. I whispered, I can't do this anymore. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked out. By morning, David woke up to a house without me. But that wasn't all. The bills were waiting for him. The bank had already sent notices. The groceries were unpaid for. The electricity bill, water bill, even the mortgage. Everything he thought he had under control was actually what I had been carrying. And when he checked the accounts to prepare for his birthday party, he found them empty. His world collapsed in a single moment. And as for me, I was already miles away, sitting quietly in a bus station, watching the sunrise, wondering what would happen when the truth finally sank in. But what I didn't know then was that my leaving would not just shake his world. It would destroy him in ways I couldn't imagine. Because later that same day, something happened that none of us saw coming. Broken heart. The sound of David's voice echoed through the walls that morning, even though I was miles away. "Mom? Mom!" he shouted, his footsteps pounding the wooden floorboards of the house. He searched every room, the kitchen, the backyard, even the garage, but there was no trace of me. Only silence and the faint smell of the chicken stew we'd eaten the night before. At first he thought maybe I had gone for a morning walk. But when he noticed my bedroom door open, the bed neatly made, and my suitcase gone, something inside him shifted. Panic. He rushed to the phone and tried calling me. But my number had been disconnected. Then he went to the bank thinking maybe I had gone there. That's when the truth slapped him across the face. The accounts were empty, completely drained. His hands trembled as he held the bank slip. No, this can't be happening. That same day, bills began pouring in. The electricity company sent a warning. The mortgage reminder showed up in his email. His wife asked why the groceries weren't delivered like they usually were. Slowly, everything he thought was stable began falling apart before his eyes. And that was only the beginning of his downfall. Meanwhile, I was sitting at the bus station cafe, sipping a cup of hot coffee. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom. But it was mixed with guilt. My son was probably pacing, confused, maybe even angry. I whispered to myself, maybe this will teach him. Maybe he'll understand what it means to lose someone who holds everything together quietly. I didn't hate David. No, a mother can never truly hate her child. But his words had crushed me, and leaving was the only way to make him see my worth. I had enough money in my bag to live comfortably for a while. I wasn't planning on staying in Springfield. My heart told me to travel south, maybe to Tennessee, where no one knew me. A fresh start. A quiet life. But little did I know, while I was sipping that coffee and dreaming of peace, David's entire world was collapsing faster than I imagined. That afternoon, David had a party planned. Friends were supposed to come over for his birthday weekend. He had bragged about it at work, promising an evening of food, drinks, and laughter. But when he checked his accounts again to buy supplies, there was nothing. His face went pale. He called the bank manager in desperation. "There must be a mistake," he shouted into the phone. But the manager calmly explained, "Sir, the account holder withdrew all funds this week." "The account holder? But that's my..." He stopped mid-sentence as realization dawned on him. It wasn't his money. It was mine. Everything he thought belonged to him. The bills being paid, the steady flow of groceries, the safety net, had been from my sacrifice. Without me, he had nothing. By the time his friends arrived that evening, the house was dark. No music, no food, no drinks. Just David sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. His wife stood in the corner, glaring at him. "Where's your mother?" one of his friends asked, looking around. She left," David muttered. "Left? Where?" "I don't know." David snapped. His voice cracked, and for the first time in years his tough mask broke. Tears welled up in his eyes. "She left, and she took everything." His friends exchanged awkward glances. Slowly, one by one, they excused themselves and walked out. The house grew quiet again. And that silence was heavier than any noise. The days that followed were brutal for David. The bills piled up. His wife, furious at the sudden financial chaos, blamed him for everything. His friends exchanged awkward glances. Slowly, one by one, they excused themselves and walked out. The house grew quiet again. And that silence was heavier than any noise. The days that followed were brutal for David. The bills piled up. His wife, furious at the sudden financial chaos, blamed him for everything. Your mother was carrying us, she screamed one night. And you treated her like trash. Now look at us, we're drowning. I didn't know, David whispered, his voice shaking. You didn't care to know, she shot back. Those words stung him the same way his words had once stung me. While David's house turned into a storm, I was settling into a small motel in Nashville, Tennessee. The manager, a kind older man, gave me a discount when I told him I was a retired schoolteacher. I spent my mornings walking through the city, watching families laugh together in parks, children chasing after balloons, and couples holding hands. My heart ached. I wondered if David's children missed me, if they asked where Grandma had gone. But I kept reminding myself, this was necessary. Sometimes people only value something when it's gone. Still at night, when the motel room grew silent, my heart would whisper, what if he never forgives you? What if this destroys him completely? I pushed those thoughts away and told myself, he has to learn. One evening, about a week after I left, I got a call on the motel's landline. The receptionist knocked on my door. Ma'am, there's a phone call for you. I was surprised. Hardly anyone knew where I was. Slowly, I picked up the receiver. Hello. There was silence for a moment. Then a voice I didn't recognize spoke. Are you Margaret? David's mother? Yes, who is this? This is Officer Reynolds from Springfield Police Department. Ma'am, I'm afraid I have some bad news. My hand froze. My chest tightened. What happened? I asked, my voice trembling. The officer sighed. It's about your son. And right then, the line went dead. I stood there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart racing so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Something had happened to David. Something big. But what? Broken heart. I stood frozen with the motel phone pressed against my ear, my hand shaking. Hello? Hello? I shouted, hoping the officer was still there. But the line had already gone dead. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the bed. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The words kept echoing in my mind. It's about your son. What had happened to David? I rushed downstairs to the front desk. Please, can you reconnect that call? It was the police from Springfield. The receptionist tried, but the line wouldn't go through. He gave me a sympathetic look. Ma'am, maybe they'll call again. I nodded numbly and went back to my room. But every minute felt like an hour. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the phone rang again. I almost tripped over myself rushing to pick it up. Officer Reynolds? I whispered. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, the line cut earlier. His voice was calm but heavy. I don't want to alarm you, but your son David collapsed earlier today. Collapsed? My chest tightened. Yes. He fainted at home. His wife called an ambulance. The doctor said it was a combination of stress, high blood pressure, and, well, possibly shock. He's at Springfield General Hospital now. My heart sank. Tears blurred my vision. I had left to teach him a lesson, but had my leaving pushed him too far? That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in the motel bed, guilt gnawing at me. Was I punishing him or destroying him? But then I remembered his words. The greatest gift would be if you just leave this house. He had thrown me away like I was nothing. Maybe this was the only way he would understand my value. Still, he was my son, my flesh and blood. The next morning I packed my suitcase again. I bought a bus ticket back to Springfield. When I walked into Springfield General Hospital later that evening, the smell of antiseptic and the sound of beeping machines filled the air. My hands trembled as I made my way to the receptionist. I'm here to see my son David Miller, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The receptionist looked up, surprised. Are you his mother? They've been looking for you. My stomach dropped. Looking for me? Why? They'll explain. A nurse led me down the long white corridor, every step echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. When she pushed open the door, I froze. There was David, lying pale and weak on the hospital bed. His wife sat beside him, her eyes red from crying. My grandchildren were curled up in the corner chairs, looking lost and frightened. The moment David saw me, tears welled up in his eyes. His lips trembled. Mom, he whispered. For a second I couldn't move. My heart screamed to run into his arms, to hold him. to tell him everything would be okay. But my mind reminded me. He told you to leave. He broke your heart. He must understand the pain he caused. I stood by the doorway, my suitcase in hand. His wife looked at me with a mix of relief and anger. Where have you been? She snapped. Do you know what you've done? He almost died because of you. Her words cut me deeply. I wanted to defend myself, to scream that David had pushed me out, that I had been carrying the family on my shoulders. But before I could speak, David reached out a trembling hand. Mom, please don't leave me again. The room fell silent. My heart ached. For years, I had prayed for him to see me, to truly see me. And now here he was broken and begging. But then, just as I stepped closer, the heart monitor beside him started beeping wildly. Nurses rushed in. Step back, one shouted. He's crashing. I froze as alarms filled the room. Doctors swarmed around David, pushing me aside. His wife screamed. My grandchildren cried. I stood helplessly in the corner, watching the son I had carried in my womb fight for his life. And in that moment, one terrifying thought consumed me. What if my lesson killed my only son? Broken heart. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room. A sharp, terrifying beeping that pierced my ears. Nurses shouted commands, doctors rushed to his side, and for a moment the world around me blurred. Get the crash cart, one nurse yelled. Another began chest compressions. Stay with us, David. I pressed my hands over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. My son, my boy, was slipping away right in front of me. His wife clutched the children, sobbing uncontrollably. My legs felt weak and I had to grip the wall to keep from collapsing. I whispered, God, please don't take him from me. Not like this. Minutes felt like hours. The doctors worked furiously, pressing paddles against his chest. His body jolted with each shock. Come on, David, breathe, a doctor pleaded. Then suddenly the beeping slowed. A weak but steady rhythm returned to the monitor. He's stabilizing, the nurse announced. Everyone exhaled at once. Relief washed over the room. His wife dropped to her knees, thanking God. I sank into a chair, shaking from head to toe. David was alive. Barely, but alive. When the room finally cleared, only family was left. I inched toward his bedside, my voice trembling. David, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, he turned his head, looking at me with weak, tear-filled eyes. Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry. The words hit me harder than any insult he had ever spoken. My heart broke all over again, but this time not from pain, this time from love. I leaned closer, holding his hand. Rest now, my son. We'll talk later. His hand squeezed mine lightly before he drifted back into sleep. For the next 2 days, I stayed at the hospital, sleeping in a chair by his bed. His wife wasn't happy about it. You shouldn't have left in the first place, she hissed at me one morning. I swallowed my anger. And he shouldn't have told me to go. We both made mistakes. She glared but said nothing more. Deep inside, I knew she was hurting too, worried about her husband, scared for her children. We were both mothers trying to protect what we loved. One afternoon, while David slept, my grandchildren came to sit with me. Grandma, little Emily whispered. Are you going to stay now? Her big brown eyes searched mine, full of fear and hope. I hugged her tightly. Yes, baby. I'm not leaving again. She smiled through her tears. I prayed for you to come back. Daddy cried when you left. Those words cut through me like lightning. I realized then, my leaving had shaken not just David, but everyone in that house. On the third night, David finally woke fully. His voice was still weak, but his eyes were clear. Mom, I didn't mean it, he said, tears rolling down his cheeks. I was angry. I was stressed. But I didn't mean it. I stroked his hair gently. Words have power, David. You don't always get to take them back. But I forgive you. He broke down sobbing. For the first time since he was a little boy, I saw my son cry openly. It felt like a wall between us was finally breaking. But just when I thought things were beginning to heal, another storm rolled in. On the fourth day, 2 men in suits walked into the hospital room. They weren't doctors or nurses. They flashed badges. Are you David Miller? One of them asked. David nodded weakly. We need to speak with you about a financial investigation. There are serious charges regarding missing funds, unpaid loans, and property debts under your name." The room fell silent. His wife gasped. I froze. The man continued, "If you can't provide answers, we may have to take legal action." I stared at my son in shock. What debts? What loans? What was he hiding? And suddenly, I realized, maybe my leaving hadn't been the only thing that destroyed him. Maybe he had been hiding secrets all along. Broken heart, the two men in suits stood tall at the foot of David's hospital bed. Their faces were firm, unreadable. "Mr. Miller," one said, "we have records of unpaid debts under your name. Some of them go back years. There are also missing funds from a joint account that you managed." David's face went pale. He gripped the blanket tightly, his voice trembling. I can explain." My heart dropped. Missing funds? Unpaid debts? What had my son been hiding all this time? His wife looked at him in shock. "Debts? What debts? David, what are they talking about?" David opened his mouth, then closed it again, like the words were stuck in his throat. Finally he whispered, I took out loans. Business loans. Years ago. I thought I could pay them back, but what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He buried his face in his hands. "I failed. The business didn't work out. I borrowed more to cover the first loans. And then more again. It just kept piling up. I thought I could handle it, Mom. I didn't want to worry you." The room grew quiet, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. The investigator cleared his throat. "Mr. Miller, unless you can provide proof of repayment, your home and assets may be seized. We'll give you a week to come forward with documents before legal proceedings begin." Then, just as quickly as they had arrived, the men left the room. David's wife turned on him, her face twisted in anger. "You lied to me. All this time, you made me believe everything was fine. Our kids, our house, our future. You've put everything at risk." "I didn't want you to know," David cried. "I didn't want Mom to know. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." His wife stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sat frozen in my chair. My mind was spinning. My son hadn't just been ungrateful. He had been drowning in silence, hiding the truth from everyone. I reached for his hand. "David, why didn't you tell me?" He looked at me with tired, broken eyes. "Because you've already done too much for me, Mom. I couldn't bring myself to ask for more. I felt like a failure. Like a burden." The word sliced through me. A burden. The same word he had once thrown at me when he told me to leave. Now he was the one feeling it. For the next few days, the hospital became a battlefield. His wife barely spoke to him. His children clung to me, afraid of what was happening. And David? He grew quieter, as though the weight of his secrets had drained the life out of him. At night, I prayed by his bedside. "Lord, help him. Help my son find his way. Don't let him be destroyed by his mistakes." But deep down, I knew prayer alone wouldn't fix this. His debts were real. His lies had consequences. One evening, as the sun set behind the hospital windows, David finally broke his silence. "Mom," he whispered, "I didn't just fail at business. I gambled too." The word struck me like a lightning bolt. Gambled. He nodded slowly, shame filling his face. "It started small. A few bets with friends. Then online poker. Then bigger and bigger games. I thought I could win enough to pay off the loans. But I only lost more. The debts grew out of control." My breath caught in my throat. My son, my own flesh and blood, was trapped in a secret life I had never seen. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I whispered, "Oh, David, what have you done to yourself?" Before I could say more, the hospital door burst open. Two men I had never seen before stepped inside. They weren't doctors or investigators. Their clothes were rough, their eyes cold. One of them carried a folder. "David Miller?" the taller one said, his voice low and threatening. David froze, his face draining of color. The man dropped the folder on his lap. "You owe our people $50,000. And time's up. If you don't pay, we'll take something far more valuable than money." I gasped, covering my mouth with my hands. His wife and children weren't there at that moment, thank God, but I was. And as those men glared down at my son, I realized the truth. David wasn't just in debt. He was in danger. And now so was the entire family. Broken heart. The taller man leaned closer to David, his shadow falling across the bed. His voice was sharp, every word cutting like a blade.
52 dollars.
You have 1 week. If you don't pay, we'll collect in another way. David's lips trembled. I don't have that kind of money. The shorter man smirked, his eyes glinting. Then you'd better find it. Sell the house. Borrow. Beg. Steal. We don't care how. If you fail, he glanced at me, his gaze cold. We'll make sure everyone you love pays the price. I froze. My blood ran cold. They weren't just threatening David, they were threatening me. His children. All of us. When they finally left, David collapsed back against the pillows, his chest heaving. His skin looked gray, his hands shaking. I grabbed his arm. David, what have you gotten yourself into? Who are those men? He buried his face in his hands. They're loan sharks, Mom. I borrowed from them when the banks refused me. I thought I could flip the money. I thought I could win it back. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to ask how he could be so foolish. But all I could do was sit there, gripping the edge of the bed, whispering, "My God, my son is trapped in the hands of wolves." The next few days were a blur of fear and silence. I tried to act normal for the children, telling them bedtime stories and making them laugh. But inside I was drowning. Every knock on the door, every phone call, made me jump. David grew quieter each day. He knew he couldn't pay them. He knew they wouldn't forgive. One night, as I tucked little Emily into bed at the hospital's family lounge, she whispered, "Grandma, are bad people going to hurt Daddy?" I froze, my throat tightening. "No, sweetheart," I lied softly, brushing her hair. "Grandma won't let that happen." But inside, I wasn't sure. The following morning, David's wife cornered me in the hallway. Her eyes were red and swollen, her voice sharp with anger. "This is your fault," she hissed. I blinked, stunned. "My fault? How?" "You left him. You drained the accounts. If you had stayed, maybe he wouldn't have spiraled this far." Her words sliced into me. I wanted to argue, to defend myself. But deep down, guilt gnawed at me. Maybe my leaving had pushed him further over the edge. Still, I lifted my chin. He made his choices long before I left. "Don't you dare put all of this on me." She glared at me, but she had no reply. That afternoon, as I sat by David's bed, he reached out weakly and grabbed my hand. His eyes were filled with tears. "Mom, I don't want to die like this. I don't want those men to hurt you, or the kids." I squeezed his hand, my heart breaking. "Then fight, David. We'll find a way. I'll help you." He shook his head. "No. You've done enough. Too much. I ruined everything." I held his hand tighter. "You're still my son. I can't sit back and watch them destroy you." And in that moment, I made a silent vow. Whatever it took, I would protect him, even if it meant facing those men myself. 2 days later, I got my chance. I was walking back from the hospital cafeteria with a cup of tea when I saw them again. The 2 men from before, standing at the far end of the hallway. They were waiting. My heart thudded in my chest, but I forced my feet to move forward. I wasn't going to let them see fear. When I reached them, the taller one smirked. "Ah, the mother. Just who we wanted to see." I tightened my grip on the cup, my knuckles white. "Leave my son alone. He's sick. He can't fight you." The shorter one chuckled darkly. "Then maybe you can pay for him. You look like a woman with resources." My throat went dry. They didn't know I had taken the money when I left. They didn't know I had it hidden away. But in that moment I realized something terrifying. If I admitted it, they would bleed me dry. If I stayed silent, they might hurt David anyway. Before I could respond, the taller man leaned in close, his voice low and threatening. "You have 72 hours. If we don't see payment, we'll make an example of your son. And maybe your grandchildren." I froze, the cup slipping from my hand and shattering on the floor. They turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, shaking, tears streaming down my face. I had 72 hours to save my family. But what they didn't know was that I had a plan. Broken heart 72 hours. That's all the time I had. As I stood in the hospital hallway with shards of the broken cup at my feet, the weight of the men's threat pressed down on me. They weren't bluffing. I had seen it in their eyes. They would destroy my son and take whatever they wanted from us if I didn't act. I wiped my tears quickly before anyone saw me. I couldn't let David or the children know the full danger. They were already carrying too much fear. This was my burden now. And deep inside I knew one thing. If I didn't step up, my family would be crushed. That night, I sat alone in the hospital chapel. The faint glow of candles flickered against the walls. My knees ached as I knelt, my hands trembling. "Lord," I whispered, "I don't know what to do. I have the money I took when I left, but if I give it to them, they'll come back again and again. If I don't, they'll kill my son. Please show me a way." I stayed there until my tears ran dry. When I rose, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was a protector, a fighter. I decided I would use the money, yes, but not the way those men expected. The next morning, I visited the bank. The teller looked at me with surprise when I requested a large withdrawal. "Are you sure, ma'am?" he asked. "That's quite a lot to take in cash." "Yes," I said firmly. "I know what I'm doing." I left the bank with a heavy envelope tucked deep inside my purse. But instead of rushing to pay the loan sharks, I went straight to the police station. Sitting across from Officer Reynolds, the same man who had first called me about David's collapse, I laid the envelope on his desk. "These men are threatening my son," I said, my voice steady though my heart raced. "They gave me 72 hours to pay them or they'll hurt him, and my grandchildren. I need your help." Reynolds frowned, leaning forward. "Ma'am, loan sharks are dangerous. We can't just take their word. Do you have proof?" I clenched my fists. Proof? That was the problem. I had no recordings, no written threats, only fear. "I don't have proof," I admitted. "But I have bait." I pushed the envelope toward him. "If you set up a trap, I'll hand this over to them. Catch them in the act. Save my family." For a long moment he studied me. Then he nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might work." That night I didn't sleep. I stayed by David's side, listening to his weak breathing, stroking his hair like I used to when he was a child. He was still pale, still broken, but alive. He opened his eyes briefly. "Mom, why do you look so worried?" I forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." But inside my heart was racing. Tomorrow the plan would begin. Tomorrow I would put myself directly in the line of danger. The next evening I received a text message from an unknown number. "Meet us tomorrow 9 p.m. by the old mill. Don't be late. Bring the money." I showed it to Officer Reynolds. He nodded. "We'll be there, Hidden. But you have to act natural. They can't suspect anything." A shiver ran down my spine. Natural? How could I act natural when I was walking into the jaws of wolves? The following night, I left the hospital quietly. I didn't tell David. I didn't tell his wife. I didn't even kiss the children goodbye, because I knew if I did, I might never let go. The old mill stood on the edge of town, abandoned for years. The air was cold, the shadows long and eerie. My footsteps crunched on the gravel as I approached. Then I saw them. The two men stepped out from the darkness, their faces half hidden, their eyes sharp and hungry. "You brought it?" the taller one asked. I nodded, clutching the envelope in my trembling hands. "Yes. Just please leave my son and his children alone." The shorter man smirked. "We'll see." I extended the envelope toward them, my heart hammering so loudly I thought they could hear it. My palms were sweaty, my knees weak. And just as the taller man reached out to take it, a gun clicked behind me. Cold metal pressed against the back of my head. A third voice growled, "Don't move. She's not the only one who came tonight." My blood ran cold. The trap hadn't gone the way I planned. There was someone else. Someone worse. And now, I was the one caught. Broken heart. The cold steel against the back of my head froze me in place. My heart slammed in my chest so hard I thought it would burst. The taller loan shark smirked. "Looks like we've got company." The man behind me pressed the gun harder. "She thought she was smart, setting us up. But I've been watching. I saw the cops lurking in the shadows. This little trap is over. My knees almost gave way. They had found out. The plan ruined. The shorter man snatched the envelope from my trembling hands, tearing it open. He sneered when he saw the bundles of cash. Real money, he said, his grin wide and greedy. Guess the old lady really does care about her boy. I turned my head slightly, desperate to see the man holding the gun. When his face came into the light, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just some stranger. It was someone I knew. Eddie, I gasped. David's old friend from high school. Someone who had once sat at our dinner table, laughing with us. His eyes now burned with cold cruelty. Hello, Mrs. Miller, he said darkly. Your son owes me too. And this time I'm collecting. For a moment, the world spun. All these years, David's debts. And Eddie was at the center of it. The cops were out there, waiting. But if I made one wrong move, I'd be dead before they got close. Eddie, please, I whispered. You don't have to do this. We used to care for you like family. He sneered. Family? When I was broke, did David help me? No. He took my ideas, left me with nothing. This is justice. The taller loan shark turned on him. We don't share cuts, Eddie. This is our deal. Eddie tightened his grip on the gun. Not anymore. The old lady pays me, or nobody leaves here alive. The air grew thick with tension. 3 men, greed burning in their eyes. And me, an old woman, clutching nothing but prayers. I swallowed hard, my voice shaking. You're all wrong. This isn't about money. This is about a family being torn apart. For the first time, the men hesitated, glancing at one another. It was my only chance. I stumbled forward, pretending to lose my balance. The envelope slipped from the shorter man's hand, bills scattering onto the ground. Instantly, all 3 men bent down, grabbing at the cash like starving dogs. That's when the gunshot cracked through the night. I dropped to the ground, covering my head. Shouts echoed, boots pounded against gravel. Police! Drop your weapons! Flashlights cut through the darkness. Sirens wailed in the distance. The men scrambled, some firing back at the officers. Chaos erupted around me. I crawled on my hands and knees toward the mill wall, praying not to be hit. Then I heard it. Another shot, closer this time. A heavy thud followed. I turned my head, and my heart nearly stopped. One of the men lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. But it wasn't one of the loan sharks. It was Eddie. And as his eyes locked with mine one last time, his lips formed the words. Tell David, I'm sorry. His chest stilled. His hand dropped lifelessly onto the gravel. The police finally wrestled the other 2 men into custody, their weapons clattering to the ground. Officer Reynolds rushed over, kneeling beside me. Ma'am, are you hurt? I shook my head, still trembling. No, but Eddie, he was his friend. My son's friend. Reynolds' jaw tightened. We'll sort this out. You need to go home now. It's not safe for you here. But how could I go home? The image of Eddie's dying face was seared into my mind. And worse, how would I ever tell David that the man he once trusted had betrayed him and died because of it? That night, I returned to the hospital, my body weak, my spirit heavy. I sat beside my son's bed, staring at him while he slept. How much more could this family endure? I held his hand tightly and whispered, David, when you wake, I'll have to tell you the truth. But I don't know if your heart can bear it. Tears slipped down my cheeks. But before I could weep longer, the hospital lights suddenly flickered. Then darkness. The entire building lost power. And in the distance, a voice rang out through the corridor, sharp and furious. You think you can hide him from us? We're not done yet. My breath caught in my throat. The danger wasn't over. It had just walked straight into the hospital. Broken heart. The hospital plunged into darkness, the hum of machines silenced except for the faint beeping of emergency monitors. Panic spread like wildfire. Nurses whispering, patients crying, footsteps echoing through the halls. And then that chilling voice again. You can't hide forever. He belongs to us. My heart stopped. They had come back. Even after the arrests, even after Eddie's death, the shadows of David's debts were still chasing us. I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling the weak rhythm of his heartbeat. He was too fragile to move, but if we stayed here, he would be a target. Lord, give me strength, I whispered. The emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim red glow through the corridors. I peered out the doorway. Figures moved in the distance, tall, broad, dangerous. These weren't police. They were men sent to finish what the loan sharks couldn't. I turned back to my sleeping son. David, please wake up. His eyes fluttered open weakly. Mom. What's happening? There's no time to explain, I said, my voice trembling. We have to get you out of here. He tried to sit up, but pain shot across his face. I can't. Yes, you can, I whispered fiercely. Because your children need you. Because I won't let you die here. Just then the door creaked open. A nurse slipped inside, her face pale with fear. Mrs. Miller, she whispered. They're searching the wards. They've already reached the East Wing. We have to move him now. Together, we disconnected the least critical machines, leaving only a portable oxygen tank. The nurse and I each took one side of the bed and began to wheel him quietly down the hall. Every squeak of the wheels felt like thunder. Every shadow looked like a trap. We turned into a storage corridor, the nurse leading us toward a service elevator. Suddenly, heavy boots pounded the floor behind us. There. That's them. A voice barked. I froze. Men were running toward us. Go, the nurse hissed, pushing the bed faster. The elevator doors slid open just as two men lunged forward. I shoved David's bed inside, hitting the close button frantically. But one of them jammed his hand between the doors, forcing them apart. His eyes glared into mine. You're not taking him anywhere. I grabbed the nearest thing I could reach, a fire extinguisher from the wall. With all the strength in my tired arms, I swung it at his head. The metal cracked against his skull. He stumbled back with a groan, blood dripping down his face. The doors slammed shut. The elevator descended. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. The nurse steadied me. That was brave, she said. But I didn't feel brave. My hands were shaking, my knees weak. I was just a grandmother trying to save her broken son. When the elevator doors opened again, we slipped into the basement, an area filled with laundry carts, cleaning supplies, and silence. For a moment it seemed safe. We wheeled David into a corner and covered him with blankets to hide him. I crouched beside him, holding his hand. It's going to be all right, I whispered, though deep down I wasn't sure. The nurse left to find help, leaving me alone with David in the shadows. My son's eyes searched mine, filled with guilt and pain. Mom, he whispered. Why are you doing all this? After what I said to you. After the way I pushed you out, why? Tears burned my eyes. I stroked his hair gently. Because you're my son. No matter what you've done, no matter how far you've fallen, you're still mine. And I will fight for you until my last breath. His lip trembled. For the first time in years, I saw the little boy he used to be. Mom. I'm sorry, he choked. For everything. I kissed his forehead. We'll get through this. Together. Just then, a sharp crash echoed through the basement. I froze, my blood running cold. The blankets shifted as David stirred in panic. I pressed a finger to my lips. Heavy footsteps crept closer. A flashlight beam swept across the floor, landing on the wheel of David's bed, poking out from beneath the blankets. A man's voice growled. Found him. I lunged forward, trying to shield David with my own body. The beam of light lifted, blinding me. And then I saw it. The man wasn't alone. There were 5 of them, all armed. And every single one of them had their eyes locked on us. Broken heart. The basement walls seemed to close in around us, as 5 men stepped into the dim red glow of the emergency lights. Their shadows stretched long and monstrous against the walls. David trembled under the blankets, his oxygen mask fogging with every terrified breath. The leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, smirked. You thought you could run? Thought you could hide him from us? No, lady. He belongs to us until the debt is paid in full. I rose to my feet, my arms spread wide, standing between them and my son. You'll have to go through me first. They laughed, the sound cruel and echoing. What's one old woman going to do? The scarred man sneered. Inside, fear not at me. I had no weapon, no backup. But I had something they didn't: desperation. A mother's desperation. I tightened my fists. My voice was steady when I said, "He's my son. And if you take him, you'll have to kill me too." The men glanced at one another, surprised by my boldness. For a brief second, I saw hesitation in their eyes. But it didn't last. One of them stepped forward, raising his gun. Then so be it. My knees wobbled. I thought of my grandchildren upstairs. I thought of the boy David used to be, running through the yard with scraped knees calling, "Mama, look at me." I couldn't let it end like this. Just as the man's finger tightened on the trigger, a deafening bang filled the basement. The bulb above us shattered, sparks raining down. "Police! Drop your weapons!" Floodlights burst through the darkness as officers swarmed in from every side. Shouts, gunfire, chaos. The men turned their weapons on the police, bullets ricocheting against pipes and walls. I ducked low, covering David with my body. My heart hammered in my chest as the battle raged only feet away. One officer grabbed me, pulling me to safety behind a laundry cart. "Stay down, ma'am." But I couldn't stay down. Not when my son was still lying exposed. I crawled back through the chaos, shielding David with my arms. Bullets whizzed past. My ears rang. My vision blurred from smoke and sparks. Then silence. When I dared to open my eyes, it was over. The men were on the ground, their weapons scattered. The scarred leader was in handcuffs, fury twisting his face. Officer Reynolds rushed over, kneeling beside me. "It's done. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, almost impossible. Hours later, as dawn broke, David was transferred to another hospital under strict protection. His wife and children clung to him, sobbing with relief. I sat quietly in the corner, exhaustion sinking into my bones. David reached out his hand to me. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. "Mom, you saved me. I don't deserve it, but thank you." I took his hand, tears filling my eyes. "You don't need to deserve it. You're my son. That's enough." He broke down then, sobbing like the little boy he once was. And in that moment, I knew, no matter the scars, no matter the debts, no matter the years of pain, we were still bound by something stronger than all of it: love. A week later, David's debts were declared part of the criminal investigation. The men who had hunted him were locked away. And slowly, step by step, we began to heal. Life wasn't perfect. The road ahead would be hard. But we had survived the storm. And as I watched my grandchildren play in the hospital garden, their laughter filling the air, I whispered a prayer of gratitude. Because in the end, what truly matters isn't money. It isn't pride. It's the family we fight for, even when it hurts. My name is Maggie Miller from Ohio, 68 years old. If you've followed my story till now, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. And tell me, where in the country are you watching from? I love knowing where my family of listeners are joining me. Until next time, stay safe and never give up on the ones you love. Broken heart. I thought it was over. I thought once the men were arrested and David was safe in a new hospital, the storm had passed. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. I cooked warm meals for the grandchildren, read them bedtime stories, and sat quietly in the hospital garden with my son. But peace, I would soon learn, was only a fragile dream. Because one morning, just as the sun rose over the Ohio hills, I opened my mailbox and froze. Inside was a single envelope. No return address. Just my name scrawled in jagged handwriting. I tore it open with trembling fingers. And there it was. A photograph of my grandchildren walking to school. On the back in red ink were the words, "The debt lives on." The envelope slipped from my hands. My knees nearly gave out. They weren't finished. Even after all we had been through, someone still wanted revenge. I rushed inside, clutching the photo to my chest. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might tear through my ribs. When I showed it to David, his face turned ashen. "Mom, they shouldn't know where the kids go to school. How could they?" He cut himself off, his jaw tightening. His eyes darted away. And in that moment, I realized something. He was hiding another secret. For the rest of that day, I couldn't shake the image of that photograph. Every laugh from the children, every step they took, Felt like a countdown clock ticking louder and louder. I called Officer Reynolds. They're threatening my grandchildren now, I said, my voice breaking. Stay calm, he told me. Bring the letter in. We'll analyze it. It could be a scare tactic. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a scare tactic. This was a warning. And warnings like this don't come unless danger is already close. That night, after tucking the children into bed, I sat across from David in his hospital room. Tell me the truth, I said firmly. What else are you hiding from me? From them? He looked away, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. David. My voice cracked. If you love your children, if you love me, don't keep me in the dark anymore. Please. Slowly, painfully, he turned his head to face me. His eyes brimmed with shame. There's someone else, he whispered. Someone worse than the men who came before. Someone I still owe. My blood ran cold. Who? He swallowed hard. His name is Victor. He's not just a loan shark. He runs everything, gambling, money laundering, all of it. Mom, if he knows about the kids, we're already in deeper trouble than you can imagine. The room spun. My heart raced. Victor. A name I had never heard, but one that instantly filled me with dread. I grabbed his hand, my voice fierce. Then we're not going to wait for him to come for us. We're going to find him first. David's eyes widened in shock. Mom. No. You don't know what you're saying. He's dangerous. Worse than anyone. If you go near him. But I cut him off. If he's threatening my family, then I have no choice. I've already stared death in the face for you. I'll do it again. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo of my grandchildren. Their small hands clutching their school bags, their innocent smiles. And I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to hunt Victor down. But as I began my search, I didn't realize the truth. Victor was already hunting me. And he was much closer than I thought. Broken heart. The note said, the debt lives on. But the next thing that happened made me understand what that really meant. One rainy morning, not long after I decided to find Victor, I heard a soft knock on my door. I was alone in the kitchen. The children were at school. David was still in the hospital, resting under police protection. My heart beat fast. When I opened the door, a man stood there wearing a dark coat and a fedora pulled low. Rain dripped from the brim. He smiled at me like he knew me well. Mrs. Miller? He said in a voice that wanted to be friendly. I was wondering if you might remember an old friend of the family. Something cold moved through me. Up close, his eyes were small and sharp. I pretended to be polite. Do I know you? I asked, keeping my voice calm. He laughed softly, then reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of the children taken last week near the school bus. He held it up so I could see. How did you get this? I asked, my hands trembling. He smiled again. I told you the debt lives on, Mrs. Miller. You should have taken my warning seriously. He did not say his name. He handed the photo back, tipped his hat, and walked away into the rain. I closed the door slowly, my legs shaking. The photo left a cold spot in my belly. Victor was not only watching. He had people who followed the children. That was the first extreme thing of the day. It woke me up like a bell. My plan had been brave and a little reckless. Now it felt dangerous and small. I called Officer Reynolds right away. He promised to send more patrols near the school and to check the camera feeds. He asked me to be careful. He did not say don't go looking for him. He knew me well enough to know I never stayed still when my family was in danger. If I was going to find Victor, I had to do it smart. I started small. I went back to the old places David had once visited. The gambling halls, the back rooms of restaurants, the pawn shops. I asked simple questions in quiet voices. I watched faces. I wrote down names. Some people looked away. Some smiled too brightly. A few told me to mind my own business. I tried not to show fear. I tried to look like a harmless old lady. But old ladies can have iron inside their bones. A man in a gray sweater at a diner finally gave me a clue. He had seen David with a man who wore a silver ring on his right hand. He always keeps his left hand free, the man said. You follow the ring, you might find the boss. So I followed the ring. The ring led me to a warehouse by the river. It smelled of oil and wet wood. A man with a scar on his cheek met me there, wearing a cap and a smile. "You lost, ma'am," he said. I said I was looking for work, just passing. He laughed and told me to go along. I left with nothing. But on the way out, I noticed a scrap of paper stuck under a piece of packing tape. It had a phone number and the name, Victor, written in thin black pen. My hands shook as I tucked the paper into my pocket. This was the first real proof I had. That afternoon, I called the number from the safety of my car. A young woman answered. "Victor's office," she said. Her voice was careful, like she was hiding. I pretended to be a woman looking for a house to rent. She asked questions. Her answers told me more than her words. The office was a front. The front hid a dark business. I promised myself I would not show fear. I kept my voice steady, slow. I asked if I could come by for a chat. She laughed and said Victor didn't see visitors without an invitation. "Then how do I get an invitation?" I asked. Silence. Then softly. "Sometimes people are invited when they have something to give." I hung up. The line went dead. I felt like I had just put a foot into a river and found the current was stronger than I thought. That night I went into the hospital garden to clear my head. The sky was wide and black. The children were asleep in their beds. I sat and breathed, feeling the cold night air. "Grandma!" A voice behind me. I turned and saw one of David's old friends, a quiet man named Carl. He had worked with David years ago before the troubles started. He sat beside me on the bench without asking. He had worry in his eyes. "You're looking for Victor," he said. I nodded. "Do you know him?" Carl looked at his hands. "I know people who worked for him. He is careful. He does not leave tracks. He keeps his face in the shadows. He uses family's fears to get power. He does not need to be seen. He prefers to be felt." "What does he want?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Control," Carl said simply. "Money, fear, people who will do what he wants. If he has power over you, you will do as he says." I felt the truth like a hand on my shoulder. Victor wanted to scare us. He wanted me to think I could not fight back. "That's not going to happen," I said. My voice sounded small in the big night, but in my head it was loud. Carl put a hand on my knee. "Be careful, Maggie. He's not the kind to make mistakes." I thanked him and watched him leave. The hospital lights shone faintly. The garden smelled like wet grass. The next morning I made a list. 1. Keep the children safe at school. 2. Find out who in our town has ties to Victor. 3. Tell Officer Reynolds everything I learned. 4. Make a plan that didn't rely only on money. I went to the police station with the scrap of paper and the notes. Officer Reynolds took them, studied them carefully. He called in favors. He promised to widen the watch on our neighborhood. But he also looked at me with concern. "Maggie," he said softly, "you must let us handle the dangerous parts. We can't have you walking into the lion's den." "I won't," I lied. The truth was, I had never been good at standing still while danger sat at my table. I would watch. I would ask. I would push. I would not let him touch my children. That afternoon the house felt too quiet. David's wife busied herself with laundry and avoided my eyes. The children came home and dumped their backpacks by the door. They laughed and did not know that someone had watched them walk to the bus that morning. How could I let them know? How could I let them carry that weight? I went into the kitchen and made tea. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, thinking it might be Officer Reynolds with news. A scratchy voice came through. "Mrs. Miller, you are looking for Victor." "Yes," I said. My voice held steady. A laugh. Then the voice softened. "If you're looking for me, you're closer than you think." A slow sound came next, like someone placing a small object on a table. The voice did not say more. The line went dead. My hand tightened around the cup until the porcelain left a white crescent in my palm. I looked at the doorway and imagined every shadow holding a face I didn't know. Then I heard a noise from the hallway. A soft thud. The sound of a small backpack dropping on the floor. I walked out slowly. There, at the end of the hallway, lying by the shoe rack, was a small, navy backpack with a bright dinosaur patch. The same backpack my grandson loved. The zipper was open. A folded note lay on top. I picked it up with shaking fingers and read the words in black marker. We're watching. Say the money was a gift, and we will leave your children. Say no, and we start with their school. My breath left me like a balloon that had been cut. Somebody had been inside my house. Somebody had put the backpack there. And they knew my family's secrets. I dropped the note and looked down the hallway. The house was empty. The rain tapped softly at the windows. Then the front door opened a fraction, and a shadow filled the doorway. A slow, sure voice spoke, not loud but full of calm anger. Mrs. Miller, it said, you really should have stayed quiet. I could not see the man's face in the dark. But behind that voice I heard something I had not expected at all. It was a laugh. And as it echoed in the empty hallway, the words that followed cut through me colder than ice. Welcome home, Maggie. It's time to pay. The voice in the doorway was calm, too calm. That was what made my stomach twist. It wasn't the kind of voice that shouted or threatened. It was the kind of voice that meant every word. The man stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. The lock clicked. His shoes made soft sounds on the floor as he walked toward me. I gripped the note in my hand, my knuckles white. He was tall, his coat heavy with rain. His hat shadowed most of his face, but when he stepped under the hallway light, I saw his mouth curve into a thin smile. On his right hand gleamed a silver ring. The ring. The same one the man at the diner had told me about. My heart skipped. This wasn't just a messenger. This was Victor. You've been very curious, Mrs. Miller, he said. His eyes darted toward the children's shoes by the wall. Curious people make mistakes. I steadied my voice. You shouldn't be here. The police. He chuckled, cutting me off. The police? They follow rules. I don't. He moved closer, and with every step, the air seemed to grow heavier. I backed into the living room, my hands shaking. The note slipped from my grip and floated to the floor like a feather. Victor stopped, bending slowly to pick it up. He glanced at the words, then tucked the paper neatly into his coat pocket. Empty threats are useless, Mrs. Miller. But reminders? Reminders last forever. I swallowed hard. What do you want? His eyes locked onto mine. They were dark, deep, and unreadable. I want loyalty. I want silence. And I want repayment. You already took everything, I whispered. He tilted his head. Not everything. Not yet. His eyes flickered toward the family photos on the wall. David with the children, my late husband holding me years ago, birthdays, Christmas mornings, graduations. Family is worth far more than money. I felt my knees weaken, but I forced myself to stand tall. If you lay a hand on them, I swear. He raised his hand, stopping me. Swear all you like. But remember, I always collect what is owed. Before I could answer, headlights flashed across the curtains. A car pulled up outside. The sound of doors slamming shut filled the night. Victor's smile faded. His voice turned sharp. We'll finish this later. He stepped back into the shadows, slipped out through the side door, and was gone as quickly as he had come. The front door burst open. Officer Reynolds stormed in with 2 other policemen. Maggie, are you all right? I nodded, though my body was trembling. He was here. Just now. He was here. Reynolds scanned the room, then the note on the floor. His jaw tightened. Victor, he muttered. You saw him. Yes, I whispered. My hands were still shaking. And he knows everything. The officer searched the house, but he was already gone. Like smoke, Victor vanished without leaving a trace. Reynolds knelt in front of me. Maggie, listen to me. This is dangerous. You can't be alone anymore. He's making it personal now. I clutched the arm of the chair to keep from falling. The truth hit me like a heavy stone. Victor wasn't going to stop. He wasn't after money anymore. He was after control. And the only way he would stop was if I ended it. I looked at Reynolds and spoke with a voice steadier than I felt. Then we end this before he destroys us all. For the first time, I saw a flicker of worry in the officer's eyes. Maggie, ending this might cost more than you're ready to give. I met his gaze. My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried all the steel I had left. Then I'll pay the price. At that very moment, a crash came from the back of the house. the sound of glass shattering. Reynolds and his men drew their guns and rushed toward the kitchen. I froze where I stood, my heart pounding. And then I heard it, a small frightened cry. It was my grandson's voice. He wasn't supposed to be home, but somehow he was, and Victor knew it. The cry was faint, almost muffled, but I knew it instantly. My grandson. My heart jumped to my throat. Ethan. I screamed, bolting toward the kitchen. Reynolds' voice thundered behind me. Stay back, Maggie. But I couldn't. The sound of a child's fear has a way of tearing every bit of reason from a grandmother's bones. The kitchen was chaos. Glass from the back window littered the floor, glittering under the weak moonlight. The cold night air poured in. The curtains swayed like ghosts. And standing in the middle of it, my grandson, Ethan, no more than 8 years old, with a rough hand clamped over his mouth. The man holding him wasn't Victor. He was younger, leaner, with a shaved head and wild eyes. A hired hand. A messenger. But the silver glint on his right hand told me all I needed to know. He was Victor's man. The officer nearest to me raised his gun. Put the boy down. The man sneered, tightening his grip on Ethan. The child's muffled whimper pierced through me like glass. If anyone fires, the man growled, the boy gets hurt. I felt my knees weaken. I pressed my hands together, praying under my breath. Please, Lord, don't let him harm my grandson. Not this way. Reynolds stepped forward, his gun steady. Listen to me. You don't want this. Let the boy go and we'll talk. The man laughed, a dry, broken sound. Talk? I've been told to deliver a message, not to talk. His eyes flicked to me. I felt the weight of his stare. He wasn't here for the officers. He was here for me. Maggie Miller, he said, drawing out my name like poison. Victor says you've been too bold. He says you've forgotten your place. My hand shook, but I raised my chin. If Victor has something to say, he can say it to me himself. The man's grip on Ethan tightened. My grandson's eyes were wide, full of tears. Oh, he'll come, the man sneered. But first he wanted you to see how quickly he can reach inside your house. How easily he can touch what you love. My breath caught. Every part of me wanted to rush forward, to tear Ethan free with my bare hands. But one wrong move, and I'd lose him. Reynolds' voice boomed. Let the boy go now. The man smiled, a twisted, wicked smile. You want him? Then tell her to stop. Tell her to stop digging, stop asking, stop fighting. His eyes locked with mine again. Say it, Grandma. Say you'll give up. The room seemed to tilt around me. My grandson's life hung in the balance, and all I had to do was say the words. But deep in my chest, something stronger than fear burned. I had given too much already. I had lost too much. And I knew, if I surrendered now, Victor would own us forever. I stepped forward, my voice trembling but firm. You tell Victor this. The man yanked Ethan back, pressing a knife to his throat. My words caught in my chest. Careful, he hissed. One wrong word and the boy bleeds. For a moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was Ethan's sobs and the heavy breathing of the officers with their guns drawn. And then something shifted. Ethan, my brave little grandson, bit down hard on the man's hand. The attacker yelped, loosening his grip just enough. Now! Reynolds roared. The crack of a gunshot split the air. The man dropped to the floor, clutching his shoulder. Ethan broke free, running straight into my arms, sobbing into my chest. I held him tight, my tears falling into his hair. The officers pinned the man down, his screams echoing through the house. Reynolds barked orders, his voice sharp and urgent. Get him cuffed. Get him out of here. The chaos blurred around me. All I could focus on was Ethan's tiny arms around my neck, his heartbeat racing against mine. But then, as they dragged the bleeding man out of the kitchen, he laughed. Blood dripped from his lips, but his eyes glittered with something cruel. You think this is over? He spat. This is only the beginning. He's coming for you, Maggie. He's coming tonight. His laughter followed him out the door, rattling inside my skull. I tightened my grip on Ethan, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Victor was truly coming tonight. Then the real storm had only just begun. The house was sealed off by flashing lights and shouting voices. Police cars lined the street, their red and blue reflections painting the wet pavement. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering, but I didn't care who was watching. All I cared about was the trembling child in my arms. Ethan's small body shook against me. I rocked him gently, whispering, "It's all right, baby. Grandma's here." Grandma's not letting go. But inside I knew it wasn't all right. Not even close. Reynolds crouched beside me, his face grim. "Maggie," he said quietly. He meant what he said. "Victor won't wait. We need to move you, the children, everyone now." I looked around the house. Every wall held memories. Birthdays, holidays, quiet dinners where laughter once filled the air. But those walls also held secrets. David's debt, the lies, the darkness that had crawled inside with Victor's shadow. I nodded. "We'll leave. But running won't end this, Reynolds. He'll follow us wherever we go." Reynolds sighed. "I know. But tonight, survival comes first." The officers moved quickly, securing the house, checking every window, every door. Still, I felt it. The sense of being watched, of eyes hiding just beyond the reach of light. As I gathered a few things, coats, schoolbooks, Ethan's stuffed dinosaur, I noticed something strange on the hallway table. A folded envelope. It hadn't been there before. My hand shook as I picked it up. Written on the front in bold black letters was my name, Maggie. Reynolds saw it too. "Don't open that." But I already had. Inside was a single photograph. It was the family taken years ago at a park. Me, David, his wife, and the children. Everyone smiling. Except this picture was wrong. In the photo, someone had drawn a thick red X across each of our faces. All except mine. Underneath, in neat handwriting, were the words, "The debt dies with you." The room seemed to close in. My breath caught, my hands trembling so badly the picture almost slipped from my grip. Reynolds cursed under his breath. "He's in your head now. That's how he breaks people. Fear first, then silence." I pressed the photo to my chest, my jaw tight. "He doesn't know me, Reynolds. He doesn't know what I'll do for them." Ethan tugged on my sleeve, his voice soft, frightened. "Grandma, is he going to hurt us?" I looked into his wide, tear-filled eyes. My heart ached, but I forced a smile. "Not while I'm here. I promise you that." Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm had come. The officers moved us into their cars. I sat in the back seat with Ethan pressed against me, watching raindrops race down the window. My mind spun, torn between fear and determination. Victor wasn't just coming after David anymore. He had made it clear. He wanted me. As we drove away, the radio crackled. A voice came through, the dispatcher. "Urgent." Shaken. "Unit 7, be advised. Shots fired near the hospital." Repeat, "Shots fired near the hospital. Multiple victims. Suspect believed to be Victor." Reynolds slammed his fist against the dashboard. "He's moving faster than I thought." I gripped Ethan tighter, my heart racing. The hospital, where David was still lying in his bed. Victor wasn't just sending messages anymore. He was making his move. And I knew, deep in my bones, the final battle had begun. Broken heart. Before I continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, where in the country are you watching from? I love to know where my listeners are joining me. Broken heart.